Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's story. In this episode, we step into one of the darkest chapters in Jack and Tu Tien's lives. After many desperate days of searching with no results, Jack makes a bold and heartbreaking decision. He offers a 10,000 USD reward to anyone who can help find Tu Tien and baby Anna. As hope spreads across villages and forests, fate begins to shift in unexpected ways. Deep in the wilderness, Tu Tien fights against pain, exhaustion, and despair, while Jack races against time, fear, and guilt. This is a story about love pushed to its limits, about the power of not giving up. Stay until the end to witness how hope finally finds its way home. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Your support truly means the world to us. The forest no longer felt like a place on the map. It felt like a living, breathing presence. Cold, heavy, and endlessly watching. Somewhere deep beneath towering trees and tangled roots, Tu Tien lay curled beside a narrow stream, her body trembling as pain pulsed relentlessly through her legs and spine. Every movement sent sharp shocks through her nerves, like invisible blades cutting deeper each time she tried to breathe. She had lost track of how many days had passed. Time no longer followed rules here. There was only darkness, hunger, pain, and brief moments of half-sleep where reality and nightmares blended together. The stream whispered endlessly beside her, its sound haunting and cruel, as if reminding her that the world kept moving forward without her. Her phone was gone. Her bag was gone. Even her shoes were barely holding together. Everything that once connected her to life outside this forest had disappeared. All she had left were memories. Anna's tiny fingers wrapping around hers. Jack's voice calling her name in the morning. Her mother's worried eyes whenever she stayed out too late. Tu Tien squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself not to cry. Tears would only drain what little strength she had left. "If I can just find a road, just one person," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the stream. But the forest gave no answer. Morning arrived at the farm, but daylight brought Jack no comfort. The sky was clear, the sun warm, yet everything inside him felt frozen. The house was unbearably quiet. No sound of Anna babbling, no movement in the kitchen, no familiar footsteps behind him. It had been many days now, too many days. Jack sat at the wooden table, staring at his phone like it might suddenly come alive. The police had already searched. Volunteers had come and gone. They checked trails, rivers, abandoned huts. Every day ended the same way, with nothing. No Tu Tien, no Anna. That silence terrified him more than any bad news ever could. His hands shook as he unfolded a piece of paper covered in messy handwriting. He had rewritten it again and again, unsure if this was the right decision. But waiting quietly had brought him nothing except despair. At the top of the paper, written in bold letters, were the words, "Reward, 10,000 USD. Below it, a simple message, for any information leading to the location of Tu Tien and baby Anna, alive, safe, anywhere. Jack stared at the amount for a long time. $10,000. It was nearly everything he had saved. But money meant nothing now. He would give 10 times that if it meant holding them again. He stood abruptly, grabbing his phone. "Post it," he said into the phone, voice hoarse. "Everywhere. Facebook, Zalo, village groups, truck drivers, hunters, everyone. Within hours, the message spread faster than Jack expected. Farmers shared it between fields. Shop owners posted it on their walls. People from neighboring villages and distant provinces began reposting the photo of Tu Tien holding Anna, both smiling, unaware of the nightmare unfolding. Some comments were hopeful. Some were cruel. Some were rumors. But at least people were looking. For the first time in days, Jack felt something flicker inside him. Hope. Deep in the forest, Tu Tien woke with a sharp gasp as pain shot through her leg. The small fire she had built the night before had long since died, leaving only cold ash and smoke-stained stones. Her clothes were damp with dew. Her lips were cracked and bleeding slightly. She tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Her leg was swollen now, bruised dark purple. Every step was torture, but staying still meant death. She knew that instinctively. "Jack, Anna," she whispered, forcing herself upright. She drank from the stream again, cupping her hands carefully. The water was icy, but it kept her conscious. Her stomach twisted violently with hunger. She tore small roots from the soil and chewed them slowly, ignoring the bitterness. It wasn't food. It was survival. With every painful step, she called out again and again. "Is anyone there? Please. Anyone." Her voice echoed weakly between the trees, swallowed almost instantly by leaves and distance. As she walked, the forest grew denser. Sunlight barely reached the ground. Branches scratched her arms and face. The path sloped downward, then sharply up again. She slipped twice, scraping her palms raw. By midday, panic crept into her chest. Something felt wrong. She stopped abruptly when she recognized a twisted tree trunk ahead. Her heart dropped. She had seen it before. She turned slowly, and there it was again. The same moss-covered rock, the same broken branch. She was walking in circles. "No, no, please no," she whispered, her voice cracking. Her strength gave out. Tu Tien collapsed to the ground, tears streaming freely now. She hugged herself tightly, shoulders shaking as despair finally broke through her defenses. What if she never made it out? What if Anna grew up without her? What if Jack stopped believing she was alive? The thoughts crushed her chest until breathing felt impossible. Back at the farm, Jack stood in front of a small group gathered near the gate. Some were neighbors he had known for years. Others were strangers who had driven long distances after seeing the reward notice. Jack bowed deeply. "Thank you," he said, voice trembling. "If you find them, if you hear anything, please call me. I don't care about the money. I just want them home." He handed out printed photos. Tu Tien smiling gently, Anna asleep in her arms. At the bottom, the bold reward amount caught everyone's attention. A middle-aged hunter studied the image carefully. "This forest area," he said, pointing to a rough map on his phone, "has old trails and abandoned huts. People get lost there easily." Jack's heart pounded. "I'll go there now." The hunter shook his head. "You've already searched nonstop. Let us help. We know these paths." Jack wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at him to run into the forest immediately, but he forced himself to nod. "For Anna, for Tu Tien," he whispered. As the group dispersed, Jack sank onto the steps of the house, burying his face in his hands. His phone buzzed constantly now, tips, messages, photos of possible sightings. Some were obvious lies. Some were misunderstandings. But mixed among them were genuine efforts. Every vibration felt like a lifeline. That night, Tu Tien found shelter again. An old, half-collapsed hut hidden beneath thick vines. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rot, but it blocked the wind. With shaking hands, she gathered dry branches and lit another small fire. The flames flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the broken walls. She stared into the fire, exhausted beyond words. She imagined Anna's warmth against her chest. Imagined Jack's arms pulling her close, telling her she was safe. Those thoughts hurt, but they also kept her alive. "If anyone is looking for me," she whispered softly, "please don't stop." The fire burned low as night closed in again. Morning arrived quietly. Tu Tien woke to a sound she hadn't heard in days. Footsteps. At first, she thought it was another hallucination. Her heart pounded violently as she listened, barely breathing. Then she heard a cough. A real, human sound. She staggered out of the hut, nearly falling as she reached the clearing. An old man stood there, carrying a basket of firewood. His eyes widened when he saw her, dirty, injured, shaking. "Miss, what are you doing here?" he asked, alarmed. Tears poured down her face instantly. "Please," she said desperately. "Where is this place? How far to the main road?" "This is near Nam Po village," he replied after a moment. "The road is maybe 10 kilometers that way." Hope surged through her like electricity. "Can I use your phone?" she asked quickly. The man shook his head apologetically. "No signal here. I don't even carry one." Disappointment hit hard, but she didn't collapse this time. At least now she knew where she was. At least now she wasn't completely lost. "Thank you," she said, bowing repeatedly. As she followed the direction he pointed to, pain flared with every step. Her body screamed for rest, but her eyes were brighter now. Somewhere beyond the trees, people existed. Somewhere beyond the forest, Jack might be waiting. And far away, Jack's phone buzzed again. Another message, another possible lead. The distance between them was shrinking. Slowly. Painfully. But it was shrinking. The phone vibrated in Jack's hand, just as the sun dipped behind the hills. He froze, staring at the screen for half a second longer than necessary, afraid that if he moved too fast, the hope would vanish. The message came from an unfamiliar number. "I saw the reward post. There was a woman matching your description near Nam Po village this morning. She looked injured, not sure about the baby." Jack's heart slammed violently against his ribs. His fingers trembled as he typed back. "Are you sure? Please tell me exactly where. I'll come now." The reply came almost instantly, with a rough description of a trail, an old hut, and a direction toward the main road. Jack didn't think anymore. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, and ran. Meanwhile, Tu Tien moved forward one agonizing step at a time. The old man's directions echoed in her mind like a fragile map she couldn't afford to lose. Every few minutes, she had to stop and catch her breath. Her leg burned, her vision blurred, and her body felt impossibly heavy. But she kept going. "If I stop, I won't get up again," she whispered to herself. The path was barely visible, more suggestion than road. Tree roots snaked across the ground, forcing her to lift her injured leg higher than she could manage. She stumbled, nearly falling into the dirt, but managed to grab onto a branch just in time. She thought of Anna again. Not as a memory this time, but as a reason. "I'm coming back," she said out loud, her voice shaking. "Wait for me." As afternoon faded, the forest slowly began to thin. The trees spaced out just enough for sunlight to reach the ground. Tu Tien felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief that she might be close. Fear that she might still be wrong. Her steps slowed. Her head spun. And then, voices. Distant, but unmistakably human. She froze, heart pounding. "Hello?" she called, mustering all the strength she had left. "Help, please." The voices stopped. Then came hurried footsteps. Jack's truck screeched to a halt near the edge of the trail. He barely closed the door before sprinting forward, following the directions he'd been given. A few local men were already there, searching the area after seeing the reward post. "She should be somewhere around here," one of them said urgently. "We heard shouting." Jack's chest tightened. "Tu Tien!" he yelled, his voice cracking. "Tu Tien, it's me!" The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, faintly, impossibly, "Jack!" It was barely a sound, but Jack knew it instantly. He ran. Branches slapped against his face. Roots tripped him, but he didn't slow down. His heart felt like it might explode as he followed the sound again. "Jack, I'm here." He burst through a line of trees and saw her. Tu Tien stood there, swaying on her feet, her clothes torn and dirty, her face pale and thin. Her eyes locked onto his, and she collapsed. Jack caught her just in time. "I've got you," he said over and over, his voice breaking completely. "I've got you. You're safe now. You're safe." Tu Tien clung to his jacket weakly, tears soaking into the fabric. "Anna," she whispered. "Is Anna safe?" Jack froze. For a split second, fear surged. "She's not with you?" one of the men asked carefully. Tu Tien shook her head slowly, panic flashing across her face. She wasn't with me when I woke up. I've been trying to find her." Jack's world tilted, but he didn't let go. "We'll find her," he said firmly, even as his heart shattered. "I promise." The search intensified immediately. Word spread quickly, faster than before. The reward had drawn attention, but now the urgency was real, visible in Jack's bloodshot eyes and Tu Tien's broken body. Rescue teams arrived. Police coordinated with villagers. Every path was checked again, this time with renewed focus. Tu Tien was taken to a small clinic on the edge of the village. As doctors cleaned her wounds and wrapped her leg, Jack sat beside her bed, holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping him alive. "I thought I lost you," he said quietly. Tu Tien's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you stopped looking." Jack shook his head fiercely. "Never. I put up a 10,000 USD reward. The whole region knows now. We're bringing Anna home." Her fingers tightened around his. "Thank you for not giving up." Night fell again, but this time it didn't feel endless. Outside, flashlights cut through the darkness as people searched tirelessly. The reward posters were everywhere, on trees, on trucks, on phones. Every lead was followed. Every sound was investigated. Hours passed. Then just before dawn, a shout echoed through the trees. "A baby! Over here!" Jack bolted upright. Police radios crackled. Footsteps thundered. And then, someone ran into the clearing, holding a small bundle wrapped in a jacket. Anna. She was crying. Alive. Jack dropped to his knees, sobbing openly as the baby was placed gently into his arms. Anna's tiny hand curled around his finger instinctively. Tu Tien, supported by nurses, reached out shakily. When Anna was placed against her chest, she broke down completely. "I'm here," she whispered, over and over. "Mama's here." The forest, silent witness to so much pain, finally released them. By morning, the story had spread everywhere. People talked about the reward, the search, the miracle of survival. But for Jack and Tu Tien, none of that mattered.